Welcome to another episode of Behind the Now. Today I chat with talent and literary agent at Paradigm Talent Agency, Bill Douglas. Bill started from the ground level with Paradigm, before it was known as one of the best and biggest agencies, and he has so much invaluable insight to offer. Listen in to learn about Bill's journey, from knowing one person in Hollywood to becoming a top talent and literary agent, guidance for initiating and fostering relationships, and invaluable advice for creatives at every stage. Hi, Bill. Thank you so much for coming today.
Well, you're very welcome. It's nice to see you.
Yes, you too. So, tell me a little bit about how you became a talent and literary agent at Paradigm, which is one of the biggest agencies. So speak a little bit about your pathway to getting there,
Yeah,
please.
sure. So, I, coming out of college, thought I was going to produce film. I was going to be a producer, and I didn't know anyone. I really was naive about
Mhm.
taking internships and doing all that. And this is way a long time ago, before internships were such a big deal.
Mhm.
But so, what my mentor in the business, a guy named Bill Robinson, he said, Bill, why don't you go work for a talent or literary agency, and that will give you a little eye opening
Mhm.
about, how to work in the business and all that kind of stuff. And so, sure enough, that's what I did. I started my career at the Gersh Agency, and this was in 1984. And I quickly discovered, like, the last thing in the world I wanted to be was a film producer. That this agenting thing was really awesome for me. It was a great, um, avenue. Just not only could I see, you know, um, like working with all these creative elements and all that kind of stuff, and talent, and working on a myriad of different projects all the time. It was awesome, and I loved the lifestyle, and so I just stayed in it. I've only just been an agent, and so I was with the
That's
Gersh
great.
agency until they fired me.
Mhm.
They fired me in 1986, I think, at the end of the year, because I very naively thought, like, I went into them. I remember in November saying, we're coming to the Christmas break, and you know, I, if you don't promote me by the time we come back,
Mhm.
I, I may not come back. And
Yeah.
Phil Gersh, who's now deceased, said,
Uh-huh.
let me make it easy for you, Bill. And he literally, he pulled out his personal checkbook, and he wrote me a check
Oh my
and
God.
said, "You can leave now." You know,
Yeah.
so
How long had you been at Gersh before that happened?
that was like 2.5 years, I think it was.
Okay.
I'd worked
Yeah.
in
So,
both,
I mean, yeah.
yeah, in talent and in literary, and I knew that I was going to really go after literary,
Mm.
as my career, much more than talent. Although now I do work with actors and that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
anyway, um, so that was an eye-opening thing experience, and so I went very much with my tail between my legs, and I got a job at ICM.
Which is great.
Still as an assistant, not as an agent.
Okay.
Phil Gersh was right. And anyway, so yeah, so I got promoted there, though, and I was working in television, which,
Mhm.
in like 1987, wasn't the sexiest thing to do, but it was certainly it was the biggest economic driver in the business back then.
Mhm.
And so I started working with directors in television, um, and I've maintained that as kind of like my baseline business all these years later. Still
Yeah.
working with some of the same people that I started my career with, which has been really satisfying.
Yes,
That,
that's
that
amazing.
we both, both of us have gone this way.
Uh-huh.
So,
That's
and then I left ICM. I was an agent there for 7 years. I went to the William Morris agency. At the time, it was just William Morris. This is pre-William Morris Endeavor merger.
mhm.
Um, and there, I really learned the television business because I worked as a packaging agent there, um, and that was an incredible experience. And they really taught me. The William Morris Agency taught me everything about the television business:
Mhm.
international rights, syndication, cable, just the whole nine yards. Um, and as a packaging agent, you're working across all the divisions of the company:
Mhm.
music, talent, literary, motion picture, all this stuff. So that was awesome, and that was really fun. And so I was kind of like, at the time, I've been an agent for about 15 years, and I was approached by Sam Goris,
Mm.
who's running a company called Paradigm. And he said, "Bill, why don't you come here?" And I was like, "Why would I go to a smaller agency? I'm at the William Morris agency. We're the kings of the television business."
Uh-huh.
But he painted a picture for me where he was like, "Look, let's build something. You can be on the ground floor, and we can really build something." And so I thought about that for almost 6 or 7 months. I really thought about it, and it got my ego, kind of went, "Yeah, that would be kind of cool. Let's build something."
Yeah.
So I did go there, and I just remember the first week I was there, I was said to myself, "Oh my God, what have we done? What have I done?" Because it was a small agency,
Oh, wow.
and I just left the biggest agency in the world, and I was going to an agency that had, like, I think we had, I don't know, about 8 or 9 literary agents total. That
Mm.
was it.
Oh my gosh.
But
You don't think of it. People don't realize that sort of thing, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so then we built a great company, you know,
Yeah, that's
um, which
amazing.
has since been torn down by COVID. But
Mm.
you know, we
Yeah.
did it. All the vision that Sam Goris had. Whatever year that was. It's been like, I think I've been now at Paradigm for 15 or 16 years now. I don't
Wow.
remember. But yeah, we built a fantastic company, and it still remains a fantastic company, just a lot smaller. So
Yeah, and I'm sure, I mean, it'll bounce back. I'm sure. The second it
I
can.
love that attitude.
I mean, I think so, it should. I
Yeah,
watched something, I watched Sam Goris speak actually, and he has a very interesting background too. He was born
sure.
in Nazareth, Israel, and has like a very non-traditional route. So it's amazing to hear that you actually joined him when it was at the early stages,
Yes.
and really built it from the ground up.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. What was that like? Like what departments did you have at that time compared to what it is now?
What? I'm sorry. What?
Like
What
building up
departments?
Paradigm, what
Oh,
was that
yeah.
experience like?
I think Sam. Um, Sam was known as a talent agent, and he had a really nice business as a talent agent. And like I said, I think the literary was kind of like I got my great talent business, and then he kind of bolted on a little
Okay.
literary division. And so that's what we focused on first. And so um, what we decided to do was, like, let's go out, and instead of building it kind of brick by brick, agent by
Mm.
agent, I was like, well, why don't we just go buy an agency or merge with an
Mm.
agency? And so we did that. We bought 3 or 4 different agencies. The first
Oh,
one
nice.
was the Writers and Artists Agency, which was both literary and talent.
Mm.
And then we bought a company. It was called Major Clients. When we bought it, I can't remember the name of it because they just changed their name.
Mm.
But it was a solely literary group, headed by a guy named Jeff Benson, and that was a really great purchase for us. So that got us, I don't know, like 10 or 12 literary agents right
Yeah.
away. And then we bought a little music company called Monterey Peninsula Artists, and
Mm.
that led us to buying another music company called Little Big Man in New York.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, our music, that was it. It was like that was just
That is
those two
amazing.
companies combined under the Paradigm roof, just really launched our music business. And so then we
Gosh.
got into everything: commercial,
Yeah.
voiceover, books, um, animation, just the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
There was nothing you could dream up in the entertainment business that we didn't have agents that knew how to
Hmm.
sell. It was just like, so we had, offices all around the world: Toronto, Nashville, New York, Monterey, California. We bought a company down in San Diego, so we had an office down there. So we had,
That,
in the UK
yeah.
as well. So
That is
so we had
so cool to hear.
yeah, we
What
had
was
all those divisions. Yep.
Yeah. So what was the mentality? Like, what was the mentality though to think to scale so large? And it seems like quickly, but maybe it wasn't that quick. Um, but that's just like an amazing mentality to have, to realize that you guys could handle it. Or was that not even like how was that the conversation or not really?
Well, you know what was really cool about what we built at Paradigm was I never felt like the pressure of like, oh my God, we got 500 agents, because like everyone ran in their own lane, and if you
Mm,
wanted to cross into a different lane, you were welcome to. But when you buy these companies like that, they all have their own leadership. They all have
yeah.
their own, so it was more about the pressure was to blend the cultures to get it to one culture. And
Hmm.
that did take a lot of effort. And that was a lot of fits and starts, to get it right.
Hmm.
But eventually we did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and, and I got to credit Sam Goris for that. But like I said, we tried a number of different things, and we learned, oh, that's, you speak to a music agent a little differently than maybe you speak to a
Oh,
television
I
literary
see.
agent,
I see. Yeah.
and quite frankly, um, we we were all kind of old school guys, and the with a kind of a strong work ethic, and that's really changed from our upbringing, so to
Mm.
speak, into a new kind of culture in a way that agents work, kind of 24/7. We were always big on like, okay, let's be in the office from 8 to 7,
Hmm.
and then we'd see these agents kind of trooping in around 11 a.m. where we're like, what's going on? But they were just doing a lot of work, you know, uh, long before COVID. They're doing a lot
Yeah.
of work, at home on their computers, a lot of emailing and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's
And so we had to learn to deal with that. So it was just stuff like that. So,
Yeah, that's really interesting though. That's very
yeah.
interesting. Do you find that one way or the other is more effective or not really?
Well, boy, this last year has really taught us a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
this year shows that, I mean, you can't even be in the office and stuff from
yeah,
those hours.
yeah,
Yeah.
no. Yeah, so yeah, both. I think both are effective. Obviously, so much more is done now by email,
Yeah.
um, and or text and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
It's become much more the norm, um, which is for me a little bit disappointing because it doesn't really allow me, like, I was taught you get your sales hat on, so you call someone and
Yeah.
you really want to pitch them, and nowadays it's not really like that so much. It's like, the buyer, um, they really, they kind of cut you off at the pass now. They're kind of like, Bill, just send us the stuff,
Hmm.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
uh, so that's a little disappointing, but
Yeah,
uh,
that is interesting, huh? You're not, it's like
yeah.
less, it's a different kind of relationships. It's like different relationships, but they seem not, I mean, do you feel like they're not as meaningful or like it's a little bit like a quicker mentality? Do you
Well,
feel like
what's nice is, the flip side of it is, uh, because I've been doing it for so long, I have a really nice client list,
mm,
and so the I don't know what's the right way to say this. I don't have to spend so much time now whining and dining buyers so they get to know me.
yeah.
Like, so so it because it's just much more about like, well, who do you have, Bill? Because they send us your list, and fortunately, for me personally, the list, there's some really great talent on the list, so
Hmm.
um, it's easy to get the dialogue up and running, versus before in the old days, it was like you really had to work your ass off to introduce yourself to a buyer, to
Hmm.
get in the door, to do all that kind of stuff, because um, when you called them, it was going to be like a 5-minute commitment on their part, which
Hmm.
sounds ridiculous, but if they get 50 phone calls a day,
Yeah.
you know, so you don't have to do that anymore, so it
Yeah.
can really be like them saying, a lot of the interaction now is like, hey, we have this open assignment, we need a writer for this, or we need a director for that, who do you have? And so you can send over a list of, kind of a carefully curated list of 3, 4, 5 ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and that grabs their attention, and that starts the conversation. You didn't have to spend a year knocking on their door saying, "Please
Mm.
talk to me," So
Yeah, so interesting.
that's nice. So
So tell me a bit about your day to day. You can talk more about like pre-COVID because I'm sure it's very different. But just like exactly what you do, like the nitty gritty of it. So like, I know you have amazing clients and you're getting them deals and jobs. But like
yeah,
who are you interacting with on the day to day?
well, that's what
Are
makes
you
the
looking?
eating
Yeah.
stuff. That's what makes it so exciting, at least for me.
Hmm.
Is I like to say it's like, um, if I book a director on a television show to do an episode, there's not everything's pretty much standard across the board. There's not really a negotiation for that because everyone gets
Hmm.
paid the same, right? That's called favored nations. All the studios basically pay the same.
Hmm.
So so and I've done that over my career thousands of times.
Hmm.
But each transaction is a little bit different because you may react differently to the fact that you're getting an offer and you're being booked on the show than maybe I would if I was the client. And so it becomes very subtle, but every transaction requires just a certain kind of handling and thought process as you're dealing with not only the buyer, but the client. So it keeps it fresh, really. It,
Yeah, it's
it never
always so there's
becomes
always.
mundane of like, oh, it's tax season again. Okay, I've got 100 clients. I'm going to, process 100 returns. Um, on that level, it's exciting. So, in agenting, there's three. It's the triple S is
Mhm.
what I call it. Triple S duty: signing, servicing, selling. Okay.
Mm, that's great.
So, if you were like a perfect, if you were into if you worked as say a 10-hour day, because that's generally what it is,
Mhm.
and as on the production side, it becomes a 12 to 13-hour day.
Mhm.
You'd spend maybe 3 hours or so in each one of those disciplines, right? Um, Spending 3 hours trying to sign new clients to the agency or to your list, spend 3 hours with clients talking to them about their career or how we're going to go from point A to point B to point
Mhm.
C, kind of thing. Um, and then spend 3 hours like just busting hump trying to get people jobs, right? Interfacing with buyers either on specific assignments, like, hey, you need a new writer on this television show or whatever it is, and here's client A and they're
Mhm.
perfect for that. Or longer range kind of things of like, um, calling a buyer and just saying, you know I want to introduce you to this person. They're not really available right now, but they will be in 6 months.
Mhm.
And at that point, you guys should. So it's that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Or introducing clients to clients.
Mhm.
Here's an interesting actor for a director. You guys should,
Yeah. Oh, that's so
interact.
cool. Yeah.
So, so that's the selling side. So, but we're not all perfect. So some days I spend a lot more time selling. Some days, I spend a lot of time on the phone with clients. Um, it's been more difficult, I think, just for me personally during the COVID
Mhm.
experience, to get my mojo up to sign clients. I
Oh,
don't know,
okay.
just because I don't have my office, I don't have a,
Yeah.
there's no. I like I like one of the reasons I've represented clients for as long as I have, um, is I really like to get to know them.
Mhm.
So things like body language, that kind of stuff, is
Yeah.
really hard to read that on Zoom.
Yeah. It's
So
so interesting.
uh,
True.
I've noticed in the signing category of stuff of this last year, I haven't been nearly as active as in that as I
Mm.
normally am. But I find that to be the funnest part of being an agent.
Oh,
Is,
really?
yeah, discovering new talent, um, or going after and signing established talent that for whatever reasons
Mhm.
they're not happy with the representation any longer. That's it's awesome. It's really fun.
Yeah. That's really amazing. So I have like so many things I could ask you. Okay, so thinking from like the perspective of a writer or director, say they're just starting, what advice do you have for them or like to get representation?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a good question. So, well, the first thing is you don't want to be me in 1984, knowing one person in the business, right?
Mm.
So, where wherever you are in your training, whether you're in school or whether you're in um, different classes outside of
Mhm.
school, getting further, furthering your development. um, I'd really, I always counsel people that, you know, getting a cluster of creative talent together like that, whether you're in school or in a class,
Mhm.
like really get to know those people because it's rare. you know I think people have this vision maybe that Hollywood, where everyone all gathers at the same place all the time, and that you can
Mhm.
always be like, hey, look at you, hey, hey, hey. Well, it's not that way, right?
Yeah.
And so access to other creative talent, I think, is critical, and because you guys can all help one another when you're starting out, particularly.
Mhm.
So um, people that I was an assistant with, like at ICM,
Mhm.
I still have relationships with, and they're off doing all sorts of different things.
Mhm.
And so that it's nothing beats like a 30, in my particular case, a 35-year relationship. I mean, there you can really call in favor.
Yeah.
You can really say, hey, I need this, or so anyway. So start with what you have. Okay.
Mhm.
The other thing that it's an absolute requirement for any young person starting their career is you have to sign up for that IMDb Pro or Studio
Mhm.
System, service, because that is an unbelievable, you know, Rolodex. And
Mhm.
my wife told me no one knows what Rolodex is anymore.
No, I actually
So
no, I actually use that word. It's so funny. Like I have a, like a file on my computer and it says Rolodex.
right,
So that's really
yeah.
funny.
I mean, it's an
Yeah.
incredible resource. It really
Yeah.
is. And so I always counsel people, that if you're like, if you have that Studio System Pro, for instance, I don't know, if you're a writer,
Mhm.
okay, um, and your favorite director is, I don't know, make it up, I don't know, Paul Greengrass, right?
Mhm.
You can punch Paul Greengrass into the studio system and it'll pop up everything you need to know, right?
Wow.
Here's his production company. Here's the studio he's got to deal with. Here's his manager. Here's his agent. Here's his lawyer. Okay. Now, what you do with that information is up to you, right?
Mhm.
How do you navigate to get Paul Greengrass to read your script, right? How do you navigate all those things? Because everyone is going to say no, right? If you call up and say, hey, I'm a young new writer, I'm such a fan of Paul's and I got the script, they're going to be like, yeah, thanks, click.
Yeah.
So you do have to, you got to kind of figure it out. Like, why is it a good thing for Paul Greengrass to read your script, kind of thing. And
Mhm.
I always tell clients, even to this day, when they go into a meeting, I call it the 50-50 rule, that if you go into a meeting and 100% of the meeting is about you,
Mm.
your process, I'm this, I do that, my training here, da da da, me, right?
Yeah.
They'll probably say, hey, that was a really cool meeting. That was nice. Okay. But if you go into the meeting and 50% of it can be about you and your process,
Mhm.
but you also engage the other party and let them talk about themselves for 50%
Yeah.
of the time, that's a winner meeting. I mean, that's when people really walk out of that meeting saying, boy, she's really smart.
Mhm.
I want to spend more time, or I got to figure out how I can hire you. Right.
Yeah.
So I always say that to people when they say, hey, can you get your script? Can you help me get my script to Paul Greengrass or whoever it is? And
Mhm.
I always say to them, well, besides reading the script, what's in it for Paul? What's the
Mhm.
50% for Paul? Kind of thing. And that's what you guys got to figure out when you start
Yeah.
your career out. That's what everyone has to figure out. Like, well, okay, so exactly why is it a good idea for
Mhm.
these people to take interest in your material?
Yeah.
So, um, so
Yeah. That's
when
great
you're starting
advice.
out, you know,
Yeah.
build your community, right? And because I know that everyone is, as they're starting out, they're either in school, and I always tell people, start at your school. Where did you go to
Mhm.
school? Look at the alumni,
Yeah.
board, and then you go to your studio system, and you can say to Paul Greengrass, "Why is it good for you? Because you and I went to the same school, and we
Mhm.
had the same instructor, and he said to call me, or
Yeah.
call you, or whatever." And then all of a sudden, Paul Greengrass will go, "Oh, okay. Maybe I should read your script."
Yeah, that is such amazing advice. It's like so simple when you think about it, but
Simple.
it's so true and very overlooked by people.
Yeah. No.
It's really
Very.
great
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah. Because I always say to people, you don't want to be me in 1984, right? I knew one
Mm.
person. That was it.
Mhm.
Fortunately for me, that guy came through, right? He
Yeah.
said, go look for agencies. And then all of a sudden, I went to the Writers Guild of America, and there it was. I think it started with the Abrams Agency and it ended with the Jerry Zeitman Agency, but there was 150 agencies in between. And so, I had people I could start calling and saying, here's my resume, this, that, whatever. And lo and behold, I got a gig.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think of like I went to UCLA and
Oh
I
gosh.
found sorry.
I said, oh my gosh, there's a lot of alumni there.
Yeah, yeah, I'm from UCLA. And then, but it's interesting you say that because I'm thinking about what you've said, like for myself, for instance. And I went to UCLA and I was looking for an acting studio to go to. And I realized, and I didn't know anyone, like no one at all, really. And I was a theater minor, so I still wanted to study acting. And I was thinking, who could I ask that I really trust, like who's done well? And I was like, no one that I know. And then I realized that James Franco taught at UCLA. And
Yes.
then, like in a bizarre happen of events, I was leaving a screenwriting class on campus, and I saw him. And so I talked to him about acting, and I was like, I know you have your background's like in the Meisner work, and so he told me where to go, and I ended up going to the studio that I loved, and I stayed there for 3 years. And like even that studio was James Franco's community when he was younger, and they kind of
Yes.
grew up together, and then he hired them to teach there and to like do different things at the studio. So it's
Yeah.
like what you're saying is very true. I've seen it elsewhere,
Cool.
really
Well,
cool.
I always tell people too, when you have your community, it allows you to, and I mean this not only for actors,
Hmm.
but for would be producers or
Right.
writers or directors. Um, I always tell people to role play,
Hmm.
and one side is like calling up James Franco saying, James, I have a great script for you. And the other person is James Franco saying, no, I don't want to read it.
Mhm.
Whatever you throw at them, the answer is always no, I don't think it's the
Mhm.
right time for me. No, you have, or talk to this person,
Mhm.
don't talk to me. And you got to role play because um, you just said it. You had your moment with James Franco, and you were able to compose yourself and speak to him in a way that inspired him to say, "Well, why don't you try this studio?" Right?
Mhm.
You know, it, who knows what could have happened if it was one of those kind of stuttering, stammering conversations that even happens to me, right?
Mhm.
If I saw James Franco, I'd be, hey, I really liked.
I mean, yeah, I don't
I
know.
really liked
I don't
Super
even
Bad.
remember
And
how
he'd
it
be like,
went.
I wasn't in Super Bad. I'd be like, you know. So I always tell people to, find a partner who's,
Yeah.
on equal ground with you and just role play it out. And
Yeah.
really, so that way when you do have that moment, you can be like, okay, when he says no to this, I have my I have my counter.
Yeah. Like, uh-huh.
He says no to that, I got my counter,
Mhm.
it's a little bit like telemarketing.
Yeah.
They have every answer written out already. So when someone says, "Yeah, I want to buy it," you go all the way down to this one. You say, "Great, I'm going to do this, this, and this." But if they say no, or my
Yeah.
wife, or this, or that, I have all the answers all written out.
Yeah.
So you want to have
Yeah,
your
that's
answers ready.
also that's excellent advice too. It's very true. And also like the studio he recommended, by the way, was his school, which I didn't realize till I actually went there. Like I just didn't know. So
Of
that was
course.
funny. It was kind of obvious. I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I still loved it. Like it was an amazing experience. I learned so much there.
Yeah. Good. 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 Good.
Yeah. So, okay, so what is something that makes you want to take on a client? If you can speak
Um,
to that, it obviously varies
yeah,
tremendously.
it varies. It varies. So, um, you know, I guess I'll say to you what I say to the agents that are like agents that I oversee in
Mm-hmm.
different departments and stuff. Um, and please, you have to understand, I love artists. I've advocated for artists all my life. So when I say your client list should look a little bit maybe like your stock portfolio, I'm not saying artists are that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm really am saying, you know, because most stock portfolios will say you want to have a certain triple grade A,
Mm-hmm.
investment. Then you want to have a larger kind of, mid cap investment, and then you want to
Mm-hmm.
have some smaller R&D investment. And so when you look at your client list, you can kind of look at it that way, which is
Mm-hmm.
um, you need to have triple grade A assets
Mm-hmm.
uh, on your client list. You have to have artists that are desired in the marketplace. Otherwise, no one gives a shit about you. Pardon my
Mm-hmm.
language. Um, or your agency,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have to figure out a way like, how do I get that triple grade A asset on my list? Um, and then, the vast majority of the business of agencies is, um, we all want to be our, have a James Franco superstar.
Mm-hmm.
But the vast majority of, of us, we're, you know, we're good. We're not superstars. We're
Mm-hmm.
just fine. You know what? We're perfect in, and that's that kind of middle thing where, um, and you need a lot of those people because they don't make $20 million a movie or
Mm-hmm.
$10 million a movie or whatever James Franco makes. They make more like $750,000 a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can see you need like 10 of those
Yeah.
to make one James Franco, right? So that list tends to be a little bit larger. And then, the younger clients or the people you're really trying to break, they don't make any money,
Yeah.
right? You can only have a few of those at any given point in time. If
Mm-hmm.
your list is all R&D, well, you're going to have a hard time making a living. And by the way, buyers, they won't like it either because they'll get to know you. They'll be like, "Oh, that's Bill Douglas. He's the guy who's always trying to, send us all these people who've
Mm-hmm.
only written one script, or they're not produced, or there's
Yeah.
whatever." So, um, but the R&D group is the funnest group to work with
Oh
because,
yeah.
well, yeah, because you don't sign those people, or you don't want to work for them unless you see something in them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And and that's really, it can be really, really exciting when they break, when
Yeah.
your belief in them, and then you use your own political capital to help them catapult
Mm-hmm.
themselves, and then they blow up. It's awesome,
Yeah.
so
That's
yeah.
amazing. Can you talk about an experience like that?
Well, Ava DuVernay, that was a great one, for me, sure.
Yeah, that's
She's
amazing.
not no longer a client, and that's, she shouldn't be, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
she needs to be at a company that's CAA, but um, yeah. So I was involved with her early in her career. She was no longer, well, she had her publicist business and all that kind of stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
she had just directed a smaller film. I helped her put together her series Queen Sugar, which started her relationship with Warner Brothers,
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. And I got, helped her with her first television pilot that she directed. Um, and it's just, she's such a can-do spirit, and it was awesome to be able to
Yeah.
help her. Yeah. So
That is, I could totally see that. That's really exciting.
yeah.
So when you're an agent starting out though, like did you start with more developmental clients at the beginning and you guys have
No.
grown together? No, you didn't.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I started, number one, it's rare, but the the like the model is the same.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say the easiest signing for an agent is the internal sign. Okay. So the easiest sign for an agent is a client that's already with an agency. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
to jump on the team. Like when I was at the William Morris Agency, they represented the director Spike Lee, and he wasn't doing anything in television. And I was like, okay. So I knocked on the agent's door and said, hey, Spike Lee, what about him for television? The agent looked at me and said, that sounds like a good idea. And suddenly I was representing Spike Lee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. So you're speaking to transitioning, right? Like from features to TV, or like there's a transition happening, but he's known.
Yeah. So, obviously you need to come up with a good idea. Someone knocks on my door and says, hey, I really want to be, involved on Carl Franklin's team, who's a client. I'll be like, okay, sounds good. But what are you offering? The 50-50 rule, right?
Yeah.
What's the 50%, going to be for me, right? And so, you got to go in armed with some ideas and that kind of thing. But generally speaking, I've never walked into another colleague's office to say, I've got a great idea for your client, and had them say, oh, get out. They always say, let me hear the idea. So yeah. So,
okay, that's amazing. So there's a lot of innovative thinking on your end. Because things have been done for years, but you're always still like developing new ways to meet someone or like to make something happen or put something together, and it's like very innovative.
Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting. That makes it very exciting and fresh all the time.
Like all the agencies just got their ass handed to them during COVID. All the studios did too. They all lost billions of dollars, and so I think everyone's kind of like licking their wounds right now, but pre-COVID, it was the most exciting time in my career because there's never been as much money in the market as there is right now.
Yeah.
It's a crazy time. When you look at Netflix spends more on film and television production as one studio, one broadcaster, than all of the US, networks, ABC, NBC, FBC, all of them combined.
That is crazy.
Right. So, and now there's an arms race between Amazon and Netflix, or there was. We'll see what it looks like now, a year from now, in 2022. There's a lot of money in the market right now, which is fantastic for artists, all artists. I used to say to my literary group, if it was written in English, we should be able to sell it. That's how hungry the buyers were.
That's amazing.
And then we sold a show with Jonah Hill and Emma Stone, where it was all Norwegian, and we sold it off of the tape for it was called Maniac. We sold it off the trailer of the Norwegian version of the show. And we attached Jonah Hill and Emma Stone, and we sold it just based on that. So then it became like, you don't even have to write it in English, and you can sell it if you got the right elements.
Wow. That's amazing. And you're saying that's because of Netflix and Amazon specifically?
Well, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Disney Plus,
so all the streaming.
Peacock, Paramount Plus. Yeah, you have all this new, money coming into the market because they all want to acquire content. And then they're competing with your traditional broadcasters, your ABCs, your NBCs, your FXs, your, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of money now.
So you've been like very big in this business from before all of that to obviously still. What was that like, the transition? Like, how was that even, was it like slow or quick?
Obviously, I hate to admit this, but I was in the television business before Fox Broadcasting. Okay. So I was in the business when it was just 3 major broadcasters in the syndication business. And so, back then when there was only 3 broadcasters, you really, really had to nurture your relationships with those people. If you pissed off one of those buyers, you had lost a 30-year market.
Yeah.
Right? Wow. So it's just different now. And believe me, it's all changing again now in the cable markets. There's a lot of those companies now are transitioning out of scripted programming and into more reality and that kind of thing. And that's an area that I don't really sell in. So but yeah, it's like I say, as an agent, you get to you know, it's like um, you don't just get to observe it all happening. You're actually participating in
Yeah.
it happening. You know, you
Uh-huh.
can really see it. You know, you
Yeah.
can really feel um, all that change in the markets, and that's really been fun. So,
Yeah. That's so
but yeah,
cool.
so I've seen it all.
That's
And
very cool.
best, I think the best is yet to come. I mean, it's just who knows what the next Netflix will be.
Yeah.
You know, um, but
I love that. I love
when
that you
it
like
launches,
that.
they're going to want
Sorry?
to acquire content, which is good for all of us artists. So
Yeah. I love that. I really love that you're saying the best is yet to come because I'm sure a majority of people don't feel that way. But you're right, because whenever there's crisis, it's like it forces change, right? So it's like, what is that change going to be? And that change could be better than it was.
yeah,
You know? It can be.
can be.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, I'm gonna ask you a few random fun questions.
Okay,
Cool. Okay, if you were a professional athlete, what sport would you play?
baseball for sure.
Ooh,
I love baseball. Yeah.
nice. Have you played baseball? Like in your
No, no.
Okay. Okay,
Uh,
cool.
then I tried to get my kids involved with it, and they got bored with it too. But I love
Mm.
it. So
Yeah, your kids both do football.
yeah, they both play
Yeah.
football now. Yeah,
Yeah, and Liam has an amazing story. I couldn't believe that. That was
yeah,
incredible. His yeah, to
no.
doing football, it's amazing. Okay, cool. What's a weird talent that you have? Do you have any weird talent?
Well, my hair still grows,
Is that a talent? No, it looks good. Your hair is
so
actually like really good, you know? You have like the
I
like
guess
thick
that
hair.
talent is to stay away from the hairstylist.
Was your hair always long or has it gone? Is it
No
from
way, are you
COVID?
kidding me?
Oh,
No,
from
it
COVID?
was always really, really short. So
Oh. That's so funny. Oh, cool. But it looks
excuse
good.
me.
Like your hair looks good long, you
Thank you.
know? My
Thank
dad looks crazy with it long. Like it just stands out.
you.
Okay. And then is there anything that you do to be the now?
Do to be the now.
Yeah, like to be
Wow.
present.
Um, you know, I guess I just try to stay present, you
Hmm.
know. I really have been focused on that. Um, and, you know, my life has changed because of it. You know, I
Hmm.
used to spend so much time thinking about the future that I was just not participating in the present.
Hmm.
And, you know, and so now I rejoice in all of, you know, the stuff that happens now, and I'm able to mourn the things that when they don't go well, and able to live
Hmm.
in that and not skate over it. And I feel much better on a spiritual level.
Yeah, I love that. It's like acceptance of everything, the good and the bad, and that brings
Exactly.
you to here.
There you
Yeah,
go. I
that's
love it.
beautiful. Is there anything else you want to say or share or anything?
No, other than this has been awesome. So thank you. Thank you so
Oh,
much for
good. Thank
inviting
you so
me,
much.
and let's do it again soon.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I would love to. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
I really
Bye
appreciate
on.
it. Bye. Enjoy the game.
Thank you.
I'll be thinking of him. Bye.
Bye.